The rain battered Seattle's skyline, a relentless drumbeat, against the glass towers of the city's tech district. Nexus Innovations headquarters, a sleek monolith of steel and reflective windows, stood defiant against the downpour. Inside the building was a ghost town at this hour, 11:47 p.m. Long after the coders, marketers, and executives had traded their open-plan desks for the comfort of home. The only signs of life were the hum of a distant server room and the faint clatter of a janitor's cart echoing through the 17th floor. Maria Alvarez pushed her cart down the polished hallway, the wheels squeaking faintly against the marble. Her hands, calloused from years of scrubbing and sweeping, gripped the handle with a practiced ease. At 52, Maria had spent nearly 2 decades cleaning up after the city's corporate elite, first in small offices, then in glassy behemoths like this one. Nexus was her steadiest gig yet, though it came with its own burdens, late-night shifts, endless floors, and the invisibility that came with being the one who emptied the trash and wiped down the conference tables. She didn't mind the work, though. It paid for her daughter's community college tuition and kept a roof over their heads in a city that seemed to grow more expensive by the day. Tonight, though, something felt off. Maria couldn't quite place it, a prickle at the back of her neck, like the air was too heavy. She chalked it up to the storm outside, the way the wind howled through the gaps in the high-rise's facade. She paused by a floor-to-ceiling window, catching her reflection against the dark, rain-streaked glass. Her dark hair, streaked with gray, was pulled into a tight bun, and her navy uniform hung loosely on her frame. Behind her reflection, Seattle's lights blurred into a mosaic of yellow and white. She turned back to her cart, grabbing a rag and a bottle of cleaner. The executive suite was next on her rounds, a sprawling space with mahogany desks, ergonomic chairs, and a coffee bar that probably cost more than her monthly rent. As she swiped her key card and pushed open the glass door, the faint scent of espresso lingered in the air, undercut by the sterile tang of disinfectant she'd sprayed earlier. The suite was dark, save for a single light glowing from the corner office, Emily Carter's office. Emily Carter, Nexus Innovations CEO, was a name even Maria, who kept her head down and her earbuds in, couldn't avoid. At 38, Emily was a tech wonderkind, a Stanford dropout who'd turned Nexus from a scrappy startup into a cybersecurity giant in less than a decade. Her face was plastered across Forbes covers and TED Talk thumbnails, all sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes. Maria had seen her in person only a handful of times, usually striding through the lobby in tailored blazers, her phone pressed to her ear. Tonight, though, Emily was still here, her office door ajar, the glow of a laptop screen casting shadows across the room. Maria hesitated. She didn't like cleaning when executives were still around. It made her feel like an intruder, even if they rarely acknowledged her. But the suite wasn't going to clean itself, and she had 3 more floors to cover before her shift ended at 2 a.m. She wheeled her cart toward the break room, a sleek alcove off the main suite with a glass-fronted fridge, a gleaming espresso machine, and a counter littered with mugs. As she started wiping down the counter, she heard voices, low, hurried, and coming from just outside the break room door. She froze her rag, hovering over a coffee stain. The voices were muffled, but the urgency in their tone cut through the hum of the building's ventilation. Maria glanced at the door, half expecting someone to barge in, but it stayed shut. She crept closer, her sneakers silent on the polished floor. The voices were clearer now. 2 men, their words clipped and tense. "Needs to be done tonight," one said, his voice low and gravelly. "She's getting too close to the merger details. If she figures it out." "Relax," the other cut in smoother, almost amused. "It's handled. The cup's already set. She drinks that coffee every night like clockwork. By morning, it'll look like a heart attack. No one's going to suspect a thing." Maria's breath caught. Her hand tightened around the rag, the chemical scent of the cleaner suddenly sharp in her nose. She didn't know who she was, but the word heart attack sent a chill down her spine. She edged closer to the door, her heart thudding. The men were just outside their shadows, flickering against the frosted glass. "Where's the stuff now?" the gravelly voice asked. "In her office. The cup on her desk. Same one she always uses, blue ceramic gold rim. It's already prepped. Just make sure no one else touches it." Maria's mind raced. Emily Carter's office. The blue ceramic cup with the gold rim, she'd seen it before, perched on the edge of Emily's desk, half full of cold coffee, when Maria emptied the trash in the mornings. She didn't know what prepped meant, but it didn't sound like sugar syrup or oat milk. The smoother voice spoke again, a hint of a chuckle in it. "Thornton's going to owe us big for this. He's been itching to take her spot since the board meeting last month." Thornton. Maria knew that name too. James Thornton, Nexus's chief operating officer. She'd overheard snippets about him in the break room, charming, ambitious, and not above stepping on toes to climb the corporate ladder. She'd seen him once or twice, a tall man with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. If he was involved in whatever this was, it wasn't good. The voices faded as the men moved down the hall, their footsteps swallowed by the carpet. Maria stood rooted to the spot, her pulse hammering. She should stay out of it. She was just the janitor, after all. No one important. No one who mattered in the grand scheme of Nexus's glass-walled empire. But the thought of that cup sitting on Emily's desk made her stomach twist. She'd lost her own husband to a sudden heart attack 5 years ago, random, unexplained, the kind that left you replaying every moment, wondering what you could have done differently. She couldn't just walk away. She abandoned her cart and slipped out of the break room, moving quietly toward Emily's office. The hallway was dim, the storm outside casting jagged shadows through the windows. As she approached the open door, she saw Emily inside her silhouette, framed against the glow of her laptop. She was typing furiously, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, a navy blazer draped over the back of her chair. On the desk, just as the men had described, was the blue ceramic cup with its gold rim steam curling faintly from the surface. Maria's mouth went dry. She knocked lightly on the doorframe, her knuckles barely making a sound. Emily didn't look up. 1 second she muttered, her eyes fixed on the screen. "I'm in the middle of Miss Carter," Maria said, her voice rougher than she intended. She stepped into the office, her hands twisting the rag nervously. "You can't drink that." Emily's head snapped up, her brow furrowing. "Excuse me." Her tone was sharp, not hostile, but clipped like someone used to giving orders and getting answers. She glanced at Maria's uniform, her name tag, then back at her face. "What are you talking about?" Maria pointed at the cup, her hand trembling slightly. "The coffee. It's not safe. I heard some people talking. They did something to it." Emily's eyes narrowed, flicking to the cup, and back to Maria. "Who are you, and what do you mean, not safe?" She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. The air between them crackled with skepticism. Maria swallowed her throat tight. She wasn't used to being seen, let alone questioned. "My name's Maria. I clean the floors. I was in the break room and I heard 2 men talking about that cup." She gestured again, more urgently. "They said it's supposed to look like a heart attack. They mentioned someone named Thornton." Emily's expression shifted, a flicker of something, recognition maybe, or alarm crossing her face at the mention of Thornton's name. She stood, moving toward the desk, her eyes locked on the cup. "You're saying someone tampered with my coffee? That's a serious accusation." Her voice was steady, but there was a tremor beneath it, like she was trying to convince herself it wasn't possible. "I know how it sounds," Maria said, stepping closer. But I know what I heard. They said it's in that cup right there. You were about to drink it." Emily stared at the cup, her hand hovering near it, then pulling back as if it might burn her. The steam was still rising, the coffee's dark surface catching the light. She reached out, then hesitated, her fingers curling into a fist. "This is insane," she muttered, but there was less conviction in her voice now. She looked at Maria, really looked at her for the first time. "Why should I trust you? You could be, I don't know, part of some prank. Or worse." Maria's chest tightened. She'd expected this, the doubt, the dismissal. It was the same look she got when she tried to talk to her daughter's school about unpaid fees, or when she asked the building manager for a raise. "I don't have a reason to lie," she said quietly. "I've got nothing to gain here. I couldn't let you drink it without saying something." The silence stretched heavy and taut. Outside, a crack of thunder rattled the windows, and the rain seemed to pound harder against the glass. Emily's gaze darted between Maria and the cup, her jaw tight. Then, in a sudden motion, she grabbed a pen from her desk and used it to nudge the cup. It tipped, teetering on the edge, then fell to the floor with a sharp crack. The ceramic shattered, coffee spilling across the hardwood in a dark, glistening pool. A faint, acrid smell rose from the liquid. Nothing like coffee. Something chemical wrong. Emily stepped back, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered, her eyes wide. She looked at Maria, her skepticism crumbling. You were right." Maria didn't know what to say. Her heart was still racing, her hands clammy around the rag. She'd expected to feel relief, but all she felt was the weight of what had just happened, and what might still be coming. The men who'd planned this, Thornton, whoever else was involved, they weren't going to stop just because a cup broke. Emily sank into her chair, her face pale. "Who were they?" she asked, her voice low. "The men you heard. Did you see them?" Maria shook her head. "Just voices. One was rough, the other smoother, like he was in charge. They mentioned Thornton said he'd owe them for this." Emily's lips pressed into a thin line. "James Thornton," she said almost to herself. "Of course." She rubbed her temples, then looked at Maria again. "You didn't have to do this. You could have just walked away. Why didn't you?" Maria thought of her husband, of the way the doctors had shrugged when they couldn't explain why his heart had stopped. She thought of her daughter studying late into the night, dreaming of a life beyond Seattle's gray skies. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone," she said finally. "And I couldn't just stand there and let it happen again." Emily nodded slowly, something softening in her expression. She stood, grabbing her blazer from the chair. "We need to figure out what's going on," she said, her voice steadier now, like she was slipping back into CEO mode. "And I need your help. You heard them. You know more than you think." Maria blinked, caught off guard. "Me, You're not just anything." Emily cut in, her eyes fierce. "You saved my life tonight. And if what you heard is true, we're not safe yet. Neither of us." Maria felt the prickle at the back of her neck again, stronger now. The storm outside roared on, but inside a different kind of storm was brewing, one that neither she nor Emily could walk away from. The rain hadn't let up by the next evening, cloaking Seattle in a relentless gray haze that matched the tension coiling in Maria Alvarez's chest. She pushed her cleaning cart through the 17th floor of Nexus Innovations, her eyes darting to every shadow, every flicker of light. The events of the previous night clung to her like damp air, the shattered coffee cup, the acrid smell, Emily Carter's pale face, as she realized someone had tried to poison her. Maria hadn't slept well after her shift. her dreams fractured by whispers of heart attack, and the smooth, chilling voice she'd overheard in the break room. She'd gone to work, expecting routine, not a conspiracy. Now, as she sprayed cleaner on a conference table, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The office was quieter tonight, the hum of the HVAC system, the only sound breaking the silence. Most employees had left early, citing the storm, but Maria knew Emily was still here. They'd agreed to meet after hours away from prying eyes, to piece together what little they knew. Maria wasn't sure why she'd agreed. Maybe it was the way Emily had looked at her not as a janitor, but as someone who mattered. Or maybe it was the nagging fear that whoever had tampered with that cup wasn't done yet. She checked her watch, 10:15 p.m. Emily had texted her earlier a burner number she'd given Maria to avoid the company's monitored systems. Break room 10:30. Bring anything you remember. Maria had nothing but her memory of those voices and the name Thornton, but it was enough to keep her on edge. She wiped down the last table, her hands moving on autopilot, and pushed her cart toward the executive suite. The break room was empty when she arrived, the espresso machine gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Maria set her cart by the door and paced her sneakers, squeaking faintly. She replayed the conversation she'd overheard, trying to pin down details. The gravelly voice had sounded nervous, the smoother one, confident, almost smug. They'd mentioned a merger, something about Emily getting too close. Maria didn't know much about Nexus's business. Cybersecurity wasn't exactly her world, but she knew enough to recognize ambition when she heard it. James Thornton wanted Emily out, and he wasn't playing clean. The door swung open, and Maria flinched her hand, gripping the edge of the counter. Emily stepped in her navy blazer, swapped for a black sweater, her hair loose and slightly damp from the rain. She carried a laptop bag slung over one shoulder, her face set in a mix of determination and fatigue. "Maria," she said, closing the door behind her. "Thanks for coming. I know this isn't normal." Maria managed a small nod. "Didn't have much choice. Did I?" Emily's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Fair point." She set her bag on the counter and pulled out a slim laptop, its screen already glowing with open tabs. "I've been digging since last night. Whoever did this, they're not amateurs. That chemical smell from the cup, it's not something you pick up at a hardware store. We're dealing with someone who has access and planning." Maria frowned, leaning against the counter. "You think it's Thornton?" Emily hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "He's the obvious suspect. James has been gunning for my job since I took over. He's charming good with the board, but he's always been off, too calculated. And he's been pushing this merger with a rival company, Sentinel Systems, harder than anyone. I thought it was just ambition. But now—" She trailed off, her eyes narrowing. "If he's behind this, he's not working alone." Maria nodded, her mind flashing to the voices. "The guys I heard, one of them sounded like he was following orders. The other one, the smooth talker, he mentioned Thornton owing them, like this was a favor." Emily's jaw tightened. "Then we need proof. Something concrete to take to the board or the police." She opened a tab on her laptop, revealing a company server login. "I pulled some logs today. Access records, emails, delivery schedules. If someone tampered with that cup, they left a trail. But I need your help. You're in these offices when no one else is. You see things the rest of us don't." Maria shifted, uncomfortable with the spotlight. "I just clean Ms. Carter. I don't know anything about servers or mergers." "Call me Emily," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. "And you know more than you think. You heard those men when no one else did. You saved my life. That's not nothing, She paused, meeting Maria's eyes. "Tell me about last night again. Every detail you can remember." Maria took a breath, recounting the conversation as best she could. The voices, the mention of the merger, the blue cup with the gold rim. Emily listened intently, typing notes as Maria spoke. When Maria mentioned the smoother voice's chuckle, Emily's fingers froze. "That laugh," she said, almost to herself. "I've heard it before. Somewhere." "It's building." Before Maria could respond, a sharp clatter echoed from the hallway. Both women froze, their eyes darting to the door. Maria's heart kicked up, her hand instinctively reaching for the spray bottle on her cart. Emily closed her laptop, her movements quick and quiet. "Stay here," she whispered, but Maria shook her head. "I'm coming with you," she said, her voice low. "If they're still here, you're not going out there alone." Emily looked like she wanted to argue, but nodded instead. They slipped out of the break room, moving silently down the hall. The sound had come from the direction of the executive offices, where Maria's cart was still parked. As they rounded the corner, Maria's stomach dropped. Her cart was tipped over, cleaning supplies scattered across the floor. A bottle of bleach had spilled its sharp smell, mixing with the damp air. Someone had been here. Someone who wanted her to know they'd been here. Emily crouched beside the cart, her eyes scanning the mess. "This wasn't an accident," she muttered, picking up a crumpled piece of paper that had been tucked under a rag. She unfolded it, her face paling. "Look at this." Maria leaned over, her breath catching. The paper was a delivery receipt dated yesterday for a package addressed to the executive suite. The description was vague, chemical supplies lab grade, but the signature at the bottom was unmistakable. "J. Thornton." "It's not enough," Emily said, her voice tight. "A receipt doesn't prove he poisoned my coffee. But it's a start." She folded the paper and slipped it into her pocket. "We need to check the server logs. If Thornton's been accessing restricted files or meeting with anyone suspicious, it'll show up." They returned to the break room, Emily pulling up the server logs on her laptop. Maria stood watch by the door, her nerves frayed. The logs were a maze of timestamps and usernames, but Emily's fingers flew across the keyboard, her eyes narrowing as she scrolled. "Here," she said after a moment, pointing to a line. "Thornton accessed a secure folder last week, files about the Sentinel merger. He's not supposed to have clearance for that. And look at this." She opened another log, showing a series of late-night entries to the building. Thornton's keycard swiped at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. times when no executive should be here. Maria frowned. "What's he doing here that late?" "Meeting someone," Emily said, her voice grim. "Or setting something up." She opened an email client, her fingers hesitating. "I need to check his correspondence, but if he's smart, he's not using company email for this." Maria glanced at the door, her unease growing. "What about the delivery? That receipt, can we trace where it came from?" Emily nodded, pulling up the company's procurement system. "Good idea. Let's see." She typed in the receipt's tracking number, her brow furrowing as the screen loaded. "It's from a supplier we don't usually use. Some lab in Tacoma. No details on what the chemical supplies are, but it was expedited, delivered straight to the suite." Maria's mind flashed to the acrid smell from the shattered cup. "Lab-grade chemicals," she said quietly. "That's not for cleaning floors." Emily's eyes met hers, a silent agreement passing between them. They were on to something, but they were also in deeper than either had expected. "We need to be careful," Emily said, closing her laptop. "If Thornton's willing to go this far, he's not going to stop just because we're asking questions." As if on cue, Maria's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her heart sinking at the unknown number. The text was short: "Stay out of it, or your daughter pays." Her hands shook as she showed the screen to Emily, her throat tight. She thought of Sophia, her 19-year-old daughter, studying late at the library across town. Maria had spent years shielding her from the world's sharp edges, but now those edges were cutting too close. Emily's face hardened. "They're scared," she said, her voice low. "That means we're close, but we need to be smart. No police yet. Not until we have something they can't ignore. Can you get me into the storage room where the deliveries are kept?" Maria nodded, her fear warring with a stubborn resolve. "Yeah, it's in the basement. I have a key." They moved quickly, slipping out of the break room and down the service elevator. The basement was a maze of concrete corridors lit by flickering fluorescents. Maria led the way, her keycard unlocking a heavy metal door marked Storage. Inside, boxes and crates were stacked haphazardly, some labeled with Nexus's logo, others unmarked. Maria scanned the shelves, her eyes catching on a small package tucked behind a stack of printer paper. It matched the receipt's description: plain, brown, no return address, just a barcode, and Thornton's initials scrawled in black marker. Emily opened it carefully, revealing a small vial of clear liquid, its label handwritten Sample 47B. The air seemed to thicken the weight of what they'd found pressing down on them. "We need to get this tested," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we can't trust anyone in the company. Not yet." Maria nodded, her mind racing. She thought of Sophia again, the threat still burning in her pocket. "What do we do now?" Emily slipped the vial into her bag, her jaw set. "We keep digging, but we watch our backs. Thornton's not the only one playing this game." As they left the storage room, the storm outside roared louder, a reminder that the danger was far from over. Maria gripped her keycard, her resolve hardening. She'd started this by saving Emily's life. Now, she was in too deep to turn back. The storm had finally broken over Seattle, leaving the city drenched but quiet, under a pale morning sky. Maria Alvarez sat in the passenger seat of Emily Carter's sleek Tesla, the vial of clear liquid Sample 47B tucked securely in a padded envelope between them. The drive to a private lab in Bellevue felt like a lifeline, a chance to turn their suspicions into evidence. Maria's fingers fidgeted with the edge of her jacket, her mind replaying the threatening text from the night before. "Stay out of it, or your daughter pays." She'd called Sophia at dawn, her voice steady, despite her fear urging her to stay with a friend for a few days. Sophia had protested, sensing something was wrong, but Maria had brushed it off as work stress. The lie sat heavy in her chest. Emily's hands gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale. "The lab's discreet," she said, her eyes fixed on the road. "They'll analyze the vial without asking too many questions. If it's what we think, we'll have enough to go to the police?" Her voice was calm, but Maria caught the tremor beneath it, the weight of knowing someone in her inner circle had betrayed her. Maria nodded, her throat tight. "And Thornton? What if he knows we have it?" Emily's lips pressed into a thin line. "He's smart, but he's not untouchable. We've got the receipt, the server logs, and now this vial. If we can tie it all together, he's done." She glanced at Maria, her expression softening. "You didn't sign up for this. I know you're scared for your daughter. If you want out—" "No," Maria cut in, her voice sharper than she intended. "I'm not leaving you to deal with this alone. If they're threatening Sophia, they're not stopping at you. We finish this." Emily gave a small nod, respect flickering in her eyes. They drove in silence, the hum of the electric car blending with the distant rush of morning traffic. Maria's thoughts churned. Years of cleaning offices, blending into the background, had taught her to notice things others missed. A stray coffee cup, a whispered conversation, the way James Thornton's smile never reached his eyes. She'd always stayed out of the corporate games, but now she was in the middle of one, and the stakes were higher than she'd ever imagined. The lab analysis came back faster than expected. By noon, Emily's phone pinged with an encrypted email from the technician. They pulled into a quiet parking lot near Lake Washington, the water glinting under the weak sun. Emily opened the email, her face growing paler with every line. "It's a synthetic toxin," she said, her voice low. "Odorless, tasteless, designed to mimic a heart attack. The kind of thing you don't get without serious connections. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment plan." Maria's stomach twisted. "Thornton's got those kinds of connections." Emily nodded grimly. "He's been cozying up to Sentinel Systems for months. Their CEO has ties to some shady suppliers, offshore labs, unlisted contracts. I didn't think he'd go this far." She closed her laptop, her hands trembling slightly. "We need to confront him, but we do it on our terms. The board meeting's tomorrow. That's our chance." Maria frowned. "The board? In front of everyone." "It's the only way," Emily said. "Thornton's been working the board trying to undermine me. If we show them the evidence logs, receipt, lab report, he can't talk his way out. But we need to be airtight. One misstep, and he'll spin it against us." Maria nodded, her resolve hardening. She thought of Sophia, of the late nights she'd spent cleaning to give her daughter a shot at a better life. She thought of her husband gone too soon, and the way she'd promised herself to never let fear win again. "What do you need me to do?" Emily's eyes met hers, steady and fierce. "You're my eyes in the building. Check the storage room again. See if there's anything else we missed. I'll dig deeper into Thornton's emails. We meet tonight, same place, 10 p.m. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Maria returned to Nexus, her cleaning cart, a familiar shield as she moved through the bustling office. Employees chatted about deadlines and deals, oblivious to the storm brewing above them. She kept her head down, but her eyes were sharp, scanning for anything out of place. In the storage room, she found nothing new, just the same stacks of boxes, the same dusty crates. But as she turned to leave, she noticed a security camera in the corner, its red light blinking. Had it been there last night? She couldn't remember, but the thought made her skin prickle. That night, the break room felt like a pressure cooker. Emily was already there when Maria arrived, her laptop open, a stack of printed emails beside her. "Thornton's been sloppy," she said, sliding a page toward Maria. "He used a personal account for some of these encrypted, but not well enough. He's been coordinating with someone at Sentinel, promising them a cut of the merger profits if they help him neutralize me." Maria scanned the email, her heart pounding. The language was vague, but damning. The package is in place. She won't see it coming. Clear the path by Friday. She looked up at Emily. "This is enough, right?" "With the vial, it's close," Emily said, her voice tight. "But Thornton's got allies on the board. We need to make it undeniable." She paused, her eyes searching Maria's. "There's something else. I checked the security logs. Someone accessed the storage room camera feed last night, right after we left. Thornton's covering his tracks." Maria's breath caught. "He knows we were there," maybe Emily said. "Or he suspects. Either way, we're running out of time." The next morning, the boardroom on the 20th floor buzzed with tension. Maria stood at the back, her cleaning uniform swapped for a plain black dress Emily had lent her, feeling out of place among the suits and polished shoes. The board members, mostly older men with sharp eyes and sharper tongues, sat around a mahogany table, their laptops open, their faces expectant. Thornton was there, his suit immaculate, his smile as smooth as ever. He glanced at Maria, his eyes lingering a moment too long, and her stomach twisted. Emily stood at the head of the table, her presence commanding, despite the faint circles under her eyes. She'd spent the night preparing her slides loaded with data, the server logs, the delivery receipt, the lab report. Maria clutched a folder with the printed emails, her hands sweaty. They'd agreed she'd speak only if needed. Her testimony as the one who'd overheard the plot could tip the scales. Emily began, her voice steady. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't just about the Sentinel merger. It's about the integrity of Nexus Innovations. I have evidence that someone in this room has been working against the company and against me. The room stirred, murmurs rippling through the board. Thornton leaned back, his smile unfazed. Bold claims, Emily, he said, his voice smooth as silk. I hope you have proof to back that up. Accusations without evidence are reckless. Emily didn't flinch. She clicked through her slides, laying out the server logs, the receipt, the lab report. The board's murmurs grew louder, their faces shifting from skepticism to unease. Thornton's smile faltered just for a moment as Emily described the toxin in the vial. This was found in our storage room, she said, holding up a photo of the vial. Delivered under James Thornton's signature. The room erupted. Board members shouted over each other, demanding explanations. Thornton stood, his hands raised. This is absurd, he said, his voice sharp now. A setup. Emily's been under pressure. She's trying to deflect from her own failures. That receipt could be forged. The logs manipulated. And a janitor's word. He glanced at Maria, his eyes cold. Hardly credible. Maria's heart pounded, but she stepped forward, the folder trembling in her hands. I'm not just a janitor, she said, her voice steady, despite the eyes boring into her. I heard 2 men in the break room planning to poison Ms. Carter's coffee. They mentioned you, Mr. Thornton, said you'd owe them for it. She opened the folder, sliding the printed emails across the table. And these? They're from your personal account. You can't fake that. The room went silent. Thornton's face froze, his charm cracking like thin ice. The board members leaned forward, scanning the emails. One of them, a gray-haired woman with sharp glasses, spoke up. James, explain this. Now, Thornton stammered, his composure unraveling. It's a misunderstanding. Those emails are out of context. Enough. Emily cut in, her voice like steel. The police are on their way. They'll have the vial, the emails, everything. You're done, James. The boardroom doors opened, and 2 officers stepped in, their faces grim. Thornton's shoulders slumped, his fight draining away as they escorted him out. The board members sat in stunned silence, their eyes darting between Emily and Maria. Later that afternoon, Maria and Emily sat in a quiet cafe near Pike Place Market. The scent of coffee and fresh bread. A stark contrast to the sterile air of Nexus. Emily stirred her latte, her eyes distant. You didn't have to speak up, she said. That took guts. More than I've seen from most people in that building. Maria shrugged, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. I did what I had to. For you, for Sophia. For everyone who thinks people like me don't matter. Emily leaned forward, her voice soft. You matter, Maria. You saved my life, and you saved Nexus. I'm making changes, better pay for the support staff, more transparency. You showed me what I was missing, looking only at the top. Maria looked out the window, the city's bustle a reminder of the world she'd always felt outside of. She thought of the lesson this had taught her, one she'd carry forward, the people who go unnoticed, janitors, clerks, the ones who keep the world running, have voices that can change everything. It wasn't just about stopping Thornton, it was about proving that trust across divides of status or power could uncover truth and protect what mattered. She'd taught Emily that, and in turn, Emily had shown her that courage could come from anywhere. Lesson. The story teaches that listening to those often overlooked janitors, assistants, the invisible backbone of any system, can reveal truths that save lives and organizations. It underscores the power of trust across social divides, showing that unity and vigilance from any level can uphold justice and integrity. Everyone, no matter their role, has a vital part to play in protecting what's right.